Inside San Quentin, world's deadliest inmates and gang secrets exposed. Shadows over San Quentin. If you think you know the world behind bars, think again. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because what happens inside San Quentin will shock you. The early morning fog hugged the hills overlooking San Francisco Bay, curling around the jagged lines of San Quentin State Prison. At 5:43 a.m., the prison intercom crackled. "Stand by for count, stand by for count." The usual routine masked the tension simmering inside the aged concrete walls. Guards patrolled the cell blocks with practiced precision, eyes scanning for any sign of movement beyond the allotted routines. Yet even in the pre-dawn calm, whispers among the guards hinted that something unusual had stirred in the east cell block. On death row, the men were mostly silent. Each had a reputation that preceded him. Among the inmates were those whose crimes had terrorized the nation decades before, men whose names were etched into headlines and court filings alike. The infamous Charles Manson had long since died in 2017, but his shadow lingered in stories shared quietly among inmates and staff. Richard Ramirez, the night stalker, remained another lingering presence in memory, his violent spree in the 1980s a cautionary tale for staff navigating the volatile environment. While these names commanded infamy outside, inside San Quentin, the struggle was subtler, yet far more dangerous. Power among inmates was measured in influence, alliances, and the quiet coercion wielded by those who controlled the inner networks, gangs that stretched their reach from block to block. This morning, Officer Rodriguez was walking his usual patrol in Cell Block C, where gang affiliations ran deep and loyalty was currency. He had been in the prison system for over a decade, enough to recognize the small, almost imperceptible changes that signaled tension. A glance that lingered too long, a cell door left slightly ajar, an inmate's whispered conversation ending abruptly when a guard appeared. That day, his instincts were on high alert. A new inmate, recently transferred from another high-security facility, had aroused suspicion. Known to law enforcement through court filings as unconfirmed gang associate X, the man's background was murky. Reports indicated ties to violent activities, but nothing had been fully verified. As Rodriguez reached the end of the corridor, he noticed unusual activity in the recreation yard. Inmates who were normally dispersed were congregating near the far corner, exchanging objects quickly and lowering their voices. From a distance, it looked like a routine gathering, but his years of experience told him otherwise. Something had shifted, and the subtleties of human behavior, even in the rigidly controlled environment of San Quentin, could signal imminent violence. Meanwhile, investigator Dana Lopez was reviewing files in the administrative wing. She had been assigned to document gang-related movements within the prison, compiling intelligence from surveillance logs, guard reports, and official court documents. According to reports, certain factions within the prison had coordinated operations that extended outside San Quentin, money, contraband, and influence traveling through coded messages. Each morning brought new anomalies, missing items, sudden transfers, or whispered threat. Her current focus was a case that had been flagged as unconfirmed but suspicious. A small, seemingly innocuous altercation between two known gang-aligned inmates had escalated into a violent confrontation hours later, though the details remained unclear. By mid-morning, the tension became tangible. Officer Rodriguez radioed the central office. Block C, unusual gathering. Observing closely. Recommend surveillance cameras be reviewed. In the surveillance room, the grainy feeds from overhead cameras provided a disjointed perspective. Fleeting movements, shadows, and rapid hand signals exchanged between inmates. Every guard and investigator knew that in San Quentin, the smallest interaction could ripple into a larger incident. Even in the shadow of the bay, with sunlight just beginning to slice through the fog, danger was never far. As the morning unfolded, whispers among the prisoners hinted at alliances shifting, and those who had long held influence were now wary of new arrivals. It was a delicate balance of power, with each decision and observation carrying weight. The administrative wing logged every detail, yet some actions remained unconfirmed, the true intent hidden in the complex web of inmate networks. One misstep could ignite chaos, and for those inside, the consequences were immediate and unyielding. By the time the first guard shift changed, a discovery was made. An inmate's cell contained a small stash of prohibited items, cleverly concealed yet identifiable to experienced eyes. The files noted the incident, citing the item's discovery as unconfirmed evidence of a larger scheme, pending further investigation. The revelation cast a shadow over the morning, an ominous reminder that San Quentin's walls did not merely contain criminals. They also contained secrets, rivalries, and strategies that played out quietly, yet with lethal potential. Rodriguez and Lopez exchanged brief glances across the surveillance room. Neither spoke. The unspoken understanding was clear. In San Quentin, every small action mattered, and no one could assume safety merely because the environment was controlled. Outside the walls, the world might see a prison with rehabilitation programs, educational initiatives, and procedural order. Inside, it was a chessboard of influence, reputation, and survival, with stakes measured in lives and respect. As the sun fully rose over San Francisco Bay, the fog began to lift, but the tension remained thick inside San Quentin. Unknown alliances were forming, small signs of unrest flickered unnoticed by many, and the quiet watch of guards and investigators only intensified the sense that today, something significant was brewing. A revelation, a confrontation, or perhaps an escalation would soon arrive, and for those walking the corridors and towers, the day's events were just beginning, a day that could reshape the balance of power in one of the nation's most notorious prisons. Whispers and shadows. San Quentin is calm on the surface, but beneath, alliances are forming, secrets are traded, and danger lurks at every corner. Stay close, subscribe so you don't miss the truth. The morning fog had lifted from the San Francisco Bay, leaving the sprawling prison complex bathed in pale sunlight. From the towers, guards scanned the yards and cell blocks with vigilant eyes, but they knew that danger in San Quentin often existed in the smallest gestures. A hand lingering too long, a glance exchanged between inmates, a subtle shift in behavior that only those steeped in prison life could interpret. Officer Rodriguez returned to Block C for a closer inspection. The morning's discovery, the hidden stash of prohibited items, was logged in official records, but he knew that these small breaches often revealed deeper undercurrents. According to reports, some inmates had long established networks, allowing them to move contraband or influence others without drawing attention. These networks weren't always visible. Their presence was felt in subtle behaviors, in whispers exchanged behind locked doors, and in the calculated avoidance of surveillance cameras. Meanwhile, investigator Dana Lopez was reviewing surveillance footage from multiple angles. The previous day's unusual gathering on the yard replayed in grainy detail, fleeting hand signals, movement patterns, and fleeting interactions between known gang-aligned inmates. According to unconfirmed reports, one new inmate, the so-called unconfirmed gang associate X, had coordinated the gathering. Lopez noted the patterns carefully, aware that even minor irregularities could indicate larger schemes. She cross-referenced these behaviors with court filings and prior intelligence reports, building a picture of influence that spanned cell block to cell block. By late morning, the tension in Block C became tangible. Two inmates, previously allied with different factions, exchanged a heated discussion near the corner of the yard. Guards observed but didn't intervene immediately. Such confrontations were often the first indicators of a shift in power. According to verified reports, gang activity inside San Quentin had long been sophisticated, with members maintaining control over daily routines, protection arrangements, and contraband distribution. Even small disturbances could cascade into violent incidents if left unchecked. Rodriguez noticed the subtle signals immediately. One inmate, standing slightly apart from the others, appeared to watch both factions with keen interest. His posture, movements, and interactions suggested he was assessing alliances, a behavior consistent with leadership strategies documented in prison intelligence reports. The stash discovered earlier might have been a test of loyalty, a probe to gauge influence within the block. While nothing was confirmed, patterns like this were common in facilities like San Quentin, where power often shifted silently and unpredictably. As the day progressed, Lopez compiled a report summarizing verified events and unconfirmed leads. The report noted that while no overt violence had occurred, the combination of the new inmate, the concealed contraband, and the gathering on the yard constituted a high-risk situation. Officially, it remained a minor infraction, but for those who understood the prison's internal dynamics, it was a signal that the balance of control could be challenged. By late afternoon, the atmosphere inside Block C thickened. Inmates moved with calculated purpose, and guards walked with heightened awareness. From the administrative wing, Lopez observed a cluster of interactions that suggested alliances were being tested. According to reports, gang members had previously manipulated events to gain leverage, sometimes arranging minor disputes as diversions for smuggling or messaging operations. Though unconfirmed in this particular case, the patterns were unmistakable to trained observers. Even outside the immediate tension of the yard, San Quentin's influence extended. Families, lawyers, and visitors were unaware of the silent chess game unfolding within the walls. Each cell, each corridor, contained a story, documented, verified, or unconfirmed, that shaped the lives of both inmates and staff. The prison's location on the bay, its long history, and its unique role as California's death row facility compounded the pressure. Every decision, every observation, had consequences. As the evening approached, a new element emerged. Guards discovered minor alterations to cell locks in one corner of Block C. While no entry had occurred, and no items were missing, the action suggested premeditation, possibly a rehearsal for future movements. Lopez flagged the incident as unconfirmed but suspicious, noting that in prior documented cases, small modifications often preceded larger infractions. The subtlety of the act illustrated how San Quentin's inmates operated, strategically, quietly, and with an acute understanding of surveillance limits. By nightfall, tension had rippled through Block C. Investigators and guards reviewed logs, footage, and records, attempting to anticipate the next move. For the inmates, the day's events had set the stage for emerging alliances and rivalries. Power, as always in San Quentin, was fluid, and the quiet signals exchanged throughout the day would influence actions for weeks to come. For those watching closely, it was clear. The prison had revealed its first hints of conflict, and the coming days promised escalation. Tension boiling over. Inside San Quentin, power shifts silently, until one small spark ignites chaos. Don't miss what happens next. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The sun barely pierced the morning fog, casting long shadows across the recreation yard of San Quentin. Guards moved methodically, their eyes sweeping over every cluster of inmates. It was routine, yet the atmosphere was anything but calm. The events from the previous day, the discovery of contraband, the subtle power plays, and the quiet, measured movements of the new inmate, had unsettled the balance of Block C. For staff and investigators alike, there was a sense that today, the tension might finally erupt. By mid-morning, the calm broke. According to verified reports, a violent altercation occurred between two inmates with known gang affiliations. The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, CDCR, records confirm that on multiple occasions, disputes over territory, hierarchy, or contraband have escalated into physical confrontations. In this instance, two inmates exchanged heated words near the yard's far corner before one struck the other with a blunt object. The exact details of the weapon and injuries remain unconfirmed. guards intervened within moments, using standard restraint protocols to separate the combatants and prevent further escalation. Officer Rodriguez, stationed near the yard's perimeter, witnessed the incident unfold. The attackers were quickly restrained and escorted to the administrative segregation unit, but the aftershocks of the event rippled through the block. Other inmates observed the confrontation closely, noting alliances, weaknesses, and potential opportunities. According to reports and internal prison intelligence, even minor altercations in San Quentin often serve as tests of loyalty, strategy, or influence among gang networks. This was not a random fight, it was a deliberate assertion of dominance. Investigator Dana Lopez reviewed surveillance footage from the yard immediately after the incident. Her training allowed her to read subtle cues, the way one inmate hesitated before moving, the quick glance exchanged between others in the surrounding group, and the unspoken signaling that suggested premeditation. She noted in her report that some of these behaviors were unconfirmed but consistent with previously documented gang strategies, such as coordinated intimidation or establishing control over resources within the prison. Meanwhile, inside the administrative wing, prison staff began compiling a detailed log of the incident. Injuries were treated according to protocol, and medical staff documented the severity. Verified CDCR records indicate that similar incidents have occurred numerous times in the past, often tied to ongoing tensions between rival factions. The patterns were familiar. A minor disagreement escalates, a confrontation occurs, and the ripple effects influence the inmate hierarchy for days, even weeks. By early afternoon, the investigation extended beyond the immediate fight. Lopez and her team began cross-referencing previous incident reports, inmate movement logs, and visitor schedules. The goal was to identify any unverified connections, possibly external influences, that could explain the sudden escalation. While nothing was confirmed, the patterns were unmistakable. San Quentin's gang networks were highly adaptive, able to coordinate rapidly and capitalize on perceived weakness. The aftermath of the fight left the yard noticeably subdued. Inmates were more cautious, observing both each other and the guards. Officers maintained heightened vigilance, aware that one unresolved grievance could trigger further violence. According to reports, this is consistent with San Quentin's historical patterns. Tensions often simmer quietly before erupting, sometimes leading to significant security interventions or lockdowns. As evening approached, Lopez compiled a preliminary report highlighting verified facts and unconfirmed leads. One concern involved the recently transferred inmate, the so-called unconfirmed gang associate X, whose presence may have catalyzed the altercation. While there was no concrete evidence linking him directly to the fight, patterns of observation suggested he was a figure of interest, possibly influencing alliances or testing boundaries. The day ended with the yard emptying, gates locked, and officers returning to their routines. Yet the tension lingered. Inside San Quentin, every small incident had consequences. What began as a minor dispute had illuminated cracks in the delicate balance of power, exposing vulnerabilities in inmate networks and offering glimpses into the complex interplay of authority, loyalty, and survival. For guards, investigators, and inmates alike, one fact remained clear. In San Quentin, danger is never far, and power can shift in an instant. Inside the web of influence, one fight can change everything, and in San Quentin, no move goes unnoticed. Stay tuned, subscribe, and turn on notifications to follow every twist. The day after the altercation, the prison hummed with a tension that was almost tangible. The yard was quieter than usual, the inmates cautious in their movements, aware that every glance, every step, was being observed. Officers patrolled with heightened vigilance, knowing that minor disturbances could rapidly escalate into serious incidents. The previous day's fight had not only injured 2 inmates but had shifted the balance of influence among the gangs, leaving room for strategic maneuvering. Investigator Dana Lopez sat in the administrative wing, poring over footage, incident reports, and inmate records. She was mapping networks of influence, documenting verified alliances, and noting patterns that suggested unconfirmed external coordination. San Quentin, like other maximum security prisons, contained intricate webs of loyalty, intimidation, and subtle power plays. Each gang had its territory, hierarchies, and methods of enforcing control. According to reports, certain factions extended influence beyond the prison walls, coordinating through visitors, letters, and other monitored channels. Meanwhile, Officer Rodriguez monitored the new inmate, the so-called unconfirmed gang Associate X. His movements were cautious, calculated, almost predatory in their subtlety. Though there was no verified evidence linking him to the previous day's fight, Lopez's notes highlighted patterns consistent with those documented in historical intelligence reports. New entrants often act as catalysts, testing alliances and gauging loyalty. Observers in the prison intelligence unit flagged him for close monitoring, aware that in maximum security facilities, a single individual could disrupt established balances of power. In Cell Block B, another layer of tension was building. Older inmates, veterans of previous riots and gang skirmishes, began quietly consolidating influence. According to verified CDCR reports, experienced inmates often act as arbiters, negotiating disputes and maintaining order within their factions. Their presence and guidance could either defuse or inflame situations depending on which alliances were strengthened. The fight in Block C had drawn attention across multiple cell blocks, and subtle whispers hinted that the repercussions would ripple far beyond the yard. By late morning, Lopez noted a series of minor disturbances: missing personal items, altered cell locks, and sudden shifts in routine behavior. These incidents were unconfirmed as directly connected to the previous fight, but historical data showed that even minor infractions could signal the early stages of coordinated activity. In maximum security prisons, such patterns often prelude serious infractions or strategic maneuvers within gang hierarchies. Each anomaly was logged meticulously, forming part of a larger intelligence framework. Rodriguez observed a confrontation between two mid-level inmates over seating arrangements in the cafeteria. At first glance, it seemed minor, a dispute over proximity to a window, but staff recognized it as a ritualized display of dominance, a subtle assertion of influence among factions. According to reports, such micro-conflicts are common in San Quentin, often functioning as indicators of shifting loyalties. The prison's system of indirect communication, gestures, glances, whispered conversations, made the interpretation of these events critical for maintaining safety and control. By afternoon, the administrative wing had compiled a comprehensive report combining surveillance footage, verified incidents, and unconfirmed leads. Lopez presented it to senior staff. The previous fight, the presence of new inmates, and the minor disturbances indicated a potential for escalation, though outcomes remained uncertain. According to historical precedents, small confrontations like these have sometimes led to lockdowns, reassignment of inmates, or increased monitoring of vulnerable cell blocks. The goal was to preempt escalation while documenting evidence for legal and internal oversight purposes. Even as the day faded, the patterns were clear to those paying attention. Alliances were shifting, rivalries were being tested, and the new inmate remained a figure of interest. Lopez noted that although nothing was yet confirmed, the previous day's incident had illuminated vulnerabilities in the prison's social fabric. Every interaction, every observation, was part of a complex calculus: survival, influence, and reputation. As night fell over San Quentin, the fog rolling in from the bay mirrored the uncertainty inside. Guards completed their final checks, inmates returned to cells, and investigators finalized their reports. The tension did not dissipate. It simply became latent, stored in the walls and corridors, ready to emerge at the first spark. The delicate balance of power, so carefully maintained, now hung by a thread. One small action tomorrow could ignite a chain reaction, and everyone inside knew it. Sparks in the yard. One fight exposed cracks, now San Quentin teeters on the edge. Watch closely, hit subscribe to follow every dangerous move. The morning light barely touched the razor-edged towers of San Quentin, but the tension inside Block C was palpable. Officer Rodriguez could feel it in the way inmates moved. Measured, deliberate, their eyes constantly scanning for both allies and rivals. The previous day's incidents, the fight in the yard, the subtle tests of loyalty and minor disturbances, had altered the invisible hierarchy. Even small gestures carried weight. A hand resting on a railing, a glance across the yard, a whispered word between inmates, all became signals in the ongoing negotiation of power. According to verified CDCR reports, gang activity within San Quentin is structured and disciplined. Factions such as the Northern Structure, Mexican Mafia affiliates, and others exert influence across cell blocks, maintaining strict internal code. Their control is enforced subtly. Small altercations, strategic intimidation, and manipulation of contraband flow. Observers have documented that these networks often function like microcosms of organized crime outside prison walls, with leaders issuing orders from segregation units or cell blocks. Yesterday's fight had provided opportunities for some factions to assert dominance, and the yard was already feeling the aftershocks. By mid-morning, an incident erupted that tested this fragile equilibrium. Two inmates, known from court filings and verified reports to have gang affiliations, clashed during yard exercise. One inmate struck the other with a metal tray. The exact weapon details remain unconfirmed, though hospital logs confirmed a minor injury. Guards responded immediately, using standard restraint procedures and separating both parties. The altercation, while contained, sent a clear message. Previous power balances were under scrutiny. Observers noted that new inmates, including the unconfirmed gang associate X, appeared to watch carefully, measuring reactions and alliances. Investigator Dana Lopez reviewed surveillance footage from multiple angles. Her analysis, grounded in both verified incidents and historical gang behavior reports, suggested that the fight was likely pre-planned or strategically opportunistic. While there was no concrete evidence linking the new inmate to direct orchestration, patterns were consistent with documented behaviors observed in prior gang dispute. In maximum security prisons like San Quentin, even small-scale violence can serve as a test of influence, a probing for weaknesses, or a means of intimidation. Meanwhile, administrative staff began compiling incident reports. According to CDCR documentation, minor yard conflicts can escalate into full lockdowns if left unchecked. On that day, staff ensured that all records were detailed, noting verified facts and unconfirmed leads, the involvement of additional observers, minor property disturbances, and subtle shifts in inmate positioning. Each piece of information was critical to understanding the broader dynamics at play. The rest of the morning passed under heightened vigilance. Guards maintained closer proximity to gang-aligned inmates, while Lopez continued to cross-reference intelligence reports, incident logs, and visitor schedules. Historical data from San Quentin demonstrates that gang activity often correlates with inmate movements, visitor interactions, and shifts in cell assignments. Patterns like these, while not inherently violent, can precede serious infractions or coordinated maneuvers. By afternoon, the yard cleared, but the implications of the morning's fight persisted. Inmates were careful in their interactions, while guards remained alert, observing micro-behaviors: who walked together, who avoided whom, and who took subtle note of newly shifted allegiances. According to historical reports, such behavioral observation is a cornerstone of maintaining safety in maximum security prisons. Even small, unconfirmed incidents can have long-reaching consequences in the delicate balance of influence. That evening, Lopez compiled a report highlighting verified events and areas requiring continued observation. The document noted the fight, minor disturbances, and the unconfirmed presence of coordinated behavior by certain inmates. She concluded that while no large-scale incident had occurred, the yard had revealed vulnerabilities that could be exploited, particularly by new or ambitious inmates testing the boundaries of existing hierarchies. As night fell over San Quentin, the fog from the bay rolled in once more, casting long shadows across the prison. Guards performed final checks, inmates retreated to their cells, and investigators finalized logs. The yard was silent, but the balance of power had shifted, subtly but unmistakably. In San Quentin, as always, even the smallest spark can ignite a blaze, and the events of the day had set the stage for the next escalation. Lockdown. When tensions boil over, San Quentin reacts, but can the walls hold? Subscribe now to witness the fallout. The morning fog had cleared over the San Francisco Bay, revealing the sprawling expanse of San Quentin. From the observation towers, guards scanned the grounds with heightened alert. The previous day's incidents, the fight in Block C, subtle shifts in alliances, and the presence of new, unverified inmates testing loyalties, had stretched the prison's vigilance. According to CDCR reports, such patterns often precede coordinated disturbances, prompting preemptive measures to maintain order. By 9:30 a.m., intelligence compiled from surveillance cameras, prior incident reports, and verified inmate profiles indicated heightened risk in Block C and the adjacent recreation yard. Officer Rodriguez and his colleagues were briefed. Monitor potential flashpoints, reinforce high-risk areas, and maintain constant observation. The procedures followed standard maximum security protocols. Increased guard presence, staggered movements of inmates during meals and yard time, and the use of administrative segregation units if any physical altercations occurred. At 10:15 a.m., the predicted escalation began. Two inmates, previously identified in verified reports as members of rival factions, clashed over access to yard equipment. According to CDCR documentation, such disputes often serve as a test of influence or a show of strength within gang hierarchies. Guards intervened immediately, using established restraint techniques to separate the inmate. While no serious injuries were reported, the event triggered a full temporary lockdown, a verified response used to prevent further violence, ensure safety, and investigate potential contraband or orchestrated behavior. Investigator Dana Lopez reviewed surveillance footage in real time. She observed that multiple inmates were signaling subtly, movements consistent with historical patterns of coordination documented in prior intelligence reports. Though no explicit orders could be confirmed, the behavior suggested unverified coordination, possibly initiated by the recently transferred, unconfirmed gang Associate X. Lopez noted the patterns carefully, flagging them for follow-up and continued monitoring. During the lockdown, staff began a systematic sweep of the affected block. Cells were inspected, common areas cleared, and all inmates accounted for. Verified reports from CDCR outline this process. Checks for contraband, potential weapons, and evidence of gang-facilitated activity. Minor infractions were noted, including altered cell locks, missing personal items, and unusual movement patterns, all consistent with documented gang strategies. While some elements remained unconfirmed, the overall operation illustrated how a maximum security prison mitigates risks during escalations. By late afternoon, tension had not abated. Inmates remained in their cells, with restricted movement, and the yard was empty except for supervising guards conducting headcounts. Lopez continued her analysis, cross-referencing recent behaviors with historical data on gang influence, patterns of retaliation, and previous lockdowns. According to reports, prolonged lockdowns often stabilize the immediate environment but can intensify simmering rivalries, making subsequent days critical for observation. Meanwhile, Officer Rodriguez walked the corridors, observing micro-interactions. Even in lockdown, subtle gestures, a nod, a glance, a shifted stance, conveyed messages among inmates. These movements were unconfirmed as coordinated but consistent with verified intelligence about how gang networks communicate indirectly. Every subtle act could have ramifications, influencing alliances, hierarchies, and potential conflicts in the coming days. By evening, administrative teams compiled comprehensive reports of verified incidents and unconfirmed behaviors. The day's events reinforced the importance of vigilance, documentation, and procedural adherence in high-security facilities. The yard remained silent, yet the implications of the morning's clash and the ensuing lockdown lingered in every corridor, every cell block, and every shadowed corner. As night fell, San Quentin's fog rolled over the prison once again, hiding the towers and walls from the outside world. The lockdown would eventually lift, as per verified protocol, but inside, tension remained palpable. Staff, investigators, and inmates alike understood one truth. In San Quentin, every action is a signal, every reaction carries weight, and the balance of power is always precarious. Consequences and calculations. In San Quentin, every move has consequences. Some survive, some don't. Subscribe and follow the story before it unfolds further. The morning light filtered weakly through the high-security windows, casting long shadows across the corridors of San Quentin. After the previous day's lockdown, the prison was quiet, but tension remained thick, almost tangible. Guards patrolled carefully, observing micro-interactions between inmates. Even in the absence of overt violence, every glance and gesture carried meaning, a subtle communication of loyalty, defiance, or strategic positioning. According to CDCR reports, such subtleties are critical indicators of emerging conflict. Investigator Dana Lopez reviewed the compiled surveillance footage and incident logs. She cross-referenced verified behaviors with historical gang activity patterns documented in previous investigations. Minor injuries from the yard altercation had been treated, and the offenders were placed under administrative segregation, per verified CDCR protocol. While the immediate conflict had been contained, the ripple effects were evident. New alliances were forming, and previously unchallenged power structures were being tested. Some of these movements were unconfirmed as organized but aligned with documented strategies observed in prior gang dispute. Officer Rodriguez walked Block C, noting subtle changes in inmate behavior. Those who had been passive observers during prior conflicts were now positioning themselves near key players, testing boundaries. According to verified prison intelligence reports, such behaviors often precede more significant confrontations or attempts to control contraband distribution. The presence of the recently transferred, unconfirmed gang associate X remained a concern, though there was no verified evidence linking him to any orchestrated violence at this stage. By mid-morning, the administrative wing was busy documenting outcomes and enforcing procedural consequences. Verified measures included disciplinary reports, segregation placement, and confiscation of contraband. Medical staff confirmed that all minor injuries were treated, and no further incidents had occurred during the immediate lockdown period. Unconfirmed reports, however, suggested that whispered threats and subtle intimidation continued within certain factions, a reminder that influence and control in San Quentin extended far beyond documented incidents. Inmates, aware of the heightened scrutiny, adjusted their movements and interactions carefully. According to verified historical patterns, these subtle adaptations are part of long-term strategy within prison gangs. Each decision, whom to align with, whom to avoid, when to speak, when to remain silent, carries consequences that may not manifest immediately but have lasting effects on hierarchy and influence. Lopez and Rodriguez both noted that while immediate threats had been neutralized, the long-term implications required continuous monitoring. By afternoon, Lopez prepared a detailed report synthesizing verified events, documented protocols, and unconfirmed behaviors for senior staff. The report highlighted the chain of events: the yard altercation, the lockdown, the administrative segregation of involved inmates, and the ongoing observation of shifting alliances. She emphasized that while documented incidents had been contained, unconfirmed dynamics within the prison's social structure could shape future events. The analysis provided insight into gang hierarchies, emergent leaders, and potential vulnerabilities, all grounded in verified procedures and historical patterns. Even as night fell, the prison remained tense. Guards maintained heightened vigilance during the evening count, aware that subtle shifts in behavior could presage the next incident. Lopez reviewed her notes once more, aware that San Quentin was a living system, a complex interplay of verified rules, observed behaviors, and unconfirmed but plausible inmate strategies. Every day, the balance of power evolved, and today's containment might only delay tomorrow's conflict. In their cells, inmates reflected on the day's event. Alliances had been tested, influence had shifted, and some had learned where their loyalty or cunning might offer advantage. The verified consequences, medical treatment, segregation, confiscated contraband, were clear, but the unverified whispers of influence, intimidation, and strategic positioning promised that the prison's internal drama was far from over. Outside, the bay fog rolled across the hills, hiding San Quentin from the world, but inside, every move was calculated, observed, and remembered. By the end of the night, one truth was undeniable. In San Quentin, every action carries weight, every reaction influences the hierarchy, and every inmate, guard, and investigator plays a part in a high-stakes game of survival and control. The events of the past week had reshaped alliances, tested power structures, and reminded all who dwelled within that nothing in this prison was ever static. Tracing the invisible lines. In San Quentin, the walls are silent, but the networks are alive. Watch closely, subscribe to uncover the hidden dynamics behind the bars. The morning light filtered through the barred windows of San Quentin, illuminating corridors lined with cold concrete and faded murals from decades past. Inside, the rhythm of the prison continued, but beneath the routine, a complex web of influence quietly pulsed. Investigator Dana Lopez had spent the night reviewing the previous day's incidents, cross-referencing verified reports, surveillance footage, and historical data on gang activity. Her goal was to trace connections and identify patterns of behavior that could indicate unconfirmed but plausible schemes. According to CDCR reports, San Quentin houses multiple gang-affiliated factions that exercise influence subtly, regulating daily routines, controlling contraband, and asserting dominance in micro-conflict. Lopez noted that some inmates had coordinated small provocations, such as yesterday's yard altercation, in ways consistent with documented strategic behavior, though the exact extent remained unconfirmed. These small acts, she observed, were rarely spontaneous. Instead, they were embedded within the hierarchy of prison life, where influence and intimidation are tools of survival. Officer Rodriguez patrolled Block C, observing interactions with an eye trained over a decade of prison work. Gestures that would seem trivial outside, a shift in posture, the positioning of one inmate relative to another, the timing of glances, carried layers of meaning. According to verified intelligence reports, these microactions can indicate alliances, threats, or subtle tests of loyalty. Rodriguez noted that the recently transferred inmate, still designated as Unconfirmed Gang Associate X, remained at the center of attention, though no verified infractions could yet be attributed to him. By mid-morning, Lopez cross-referenced inmate communications with historical behavior patterns documented in prior investigations. Messages sent through monitored letters, visits, and even coded interactions in the yard were analyzed. While some led to verified insights, other potential connections remained unconfirmed, requiring careful monitoring. The combination of verified evidence and patterns of unverified behavior helped investigators anticipate potential flashpoints, a strategy informed by decades of maximum security prison data. Meanwhile, subtle tensions emerged in other blocks. Inmates who had observed the earlier lockdown and yard altercation were positioning themselves more cautiously. Verified CDCR reports confirm that inmates often adjust routines, movements, and alliances following incidents that disrupt existing hierarchies. Lopez noted that these adjustments were consistent with historically documented strategic adaptations, indicating that power shifts in San Quentin are rarely immediate. They unfold over days or even weeks. By afternoon, Rodriguez noticed small clusters of inmates engaging in brief, controlled discussions near cell doors and common areas. On the surface, it appeared mundane, but past intelligence reports confirm that minor gatherings can serve as the nucleus for planning future disruptions. Lopez flagged these interactions in her ongoing report, emphasizing which behaviors were verified and which were unconfirmed but plausible, allowing senior staff to adjust monitoring strategies and staffing patterns accordingly. The day's investigations also revealed logistical details of influence network. Verified patterns showed that certain inmates coordinated indirectly, using intermediary prisoners to relay messages, control movement within the block, or maintain leverage over resources. Unconfirmed reports suggested that the new transfer might be observing these mechanisms, learning the layout of influence and gauging where leverage could be gained, though no direct involvement in prior incidents could be verified. As evening approached, the administrative wing compiled a comprehensive report. Verified elements included the yard altercation, the lockdown, and observed inmate behaviors. Unconfirmed leads, including potential coordination by new arrivals, minor disturbances in other cell blocks, and subtle shifts in alliances, were clearly labeled. Lopez emphasized that while immediate security risks had been mitigated, San Quentin's social ecosystem remained highly dynamic. The day's analysis made clear that even small, subtle changes could foreshadow future incidents if left unobserved. By nightfall, the prison settled into a tense quiet. Inmates returned to their cells, guards completed final headcounts, and investigators finalized logs. The fog from the bay rolled across the complex, masking the sprawling grounds from the outside world. Yet inside, every interaction, every glance, every whisper was a thread in the web of influence, a network both verified and unconfirmed, delicate and dangerous. San Quentin had revealed glimpses of the invisible lines that governed its walls, lines that would shape the coming days, the next conflicts, and the delicate balance of survival and power. The edge of control. San Quentin's walls hold secrets, but when control slips, chaos isn't far behind. Subscribe now to follow every move. The morning fog had lifted, leaving San Quentin's towers gleaming under the first light of day. Inside, tension simmered across Block C and neighboring cell block. Officers patrolled with meticulous vigilance, fully aware that the recent lockdown and yard altercation had unsettled the delicate balance of power. According to verified CDCR reports, such sequences of events often lead to increased monitoring, temporary segregation, or strategic shifts in inmate placement to maintain order. Investigator Dana Lopez reviewed surveillance footage and incident logs from the past week. Her analysis highlighted verified conflicts, minor injuries, lockdown procedures, and administrative responses. But the true challenge lay in the unconfirmed behavioral patterns. Subtle gestures, whispered communications, and minor contraband movements that suggested potential coordination among factions. Lopez noted that these patterns aligned with previously documented gang strategies, though no direct evidence linked the new inmate, designated unconfirmed gang associate X, to orchestrating any incident. By mid-morning, a verified confrontation unfolded in the yard. Two factions, previously in a tense standoff, came into direct conflict over access to the yard's limited exercise equipment. CDCR records confirm that physical confrontations between gang-aligned inmates are not uncommon and require immediate intervention to prevent escalation. Guards responded swiftly, separating the combatants and implementing restraint protocols. Medical staff treated minor injuries, all of which were documented in official reports. Officer Rodriguez observed the incident closely. The yard had been arranged to allow maximum surveillance, yet the fight illustrated the challenges inherent in managing a high-security population. According to verified intelligence, confrontations like these often reflect larger struggles for influence and can foreshadow coordinated actions elsewhere in the facility. While the immediate clash was contained, subtle signs indicated that alliances were continuing to shift in unconfirmed but plausible ways. Meanwhile, in the administrative wing, Lopez compiled a comprehensive report for senior staff. Verified elements included the fight, restraint measures, and segregation of involved inmates. Unconfirmed leads noted in the report included possible coordination by other inmates, subtle intimidation behaviors among witnesses, and minor disruptions in other cell blocks. Historical CDCR data demonstrates that even seemingly minor incidents can have cascading effects, influencing alliances and strategies in the days to follow. By afternoon, the fallout from the confrontation became evident. Inmates who had not participated in the fight observed the outcome and adjusted their behavior accordingly. Verified patterns show that such observational learning is common in maximum security prisons, with indirect consequences shaping social hierarchies and influencing microdecisions throughout the block. Lopez flagged several instances of unconfirmed but suspicious interactions, including whispered conversations near cell doors and small, rapid exchanges of items. Guards conducted additional checks of cells and common areas, following standard CDCR protocol. Verified documentation confirmed that all contraband discovered during the sweep was confiscated, and involved inmates were placed in administrative segregation. Despite these measures, unconfirmed tensions persisted. The careful observation of microbehaviors, who avoided whom, who lingered near influential inmates, revealed that power and influence in San Quentin extended beyond documented incidents and physical confrontations. As evening approached, the prison settled into an uneasy calm. The fog from the bay rolled in once more, enveloping the prison in a cloak of silence. Inside, the consequences of the morning's confrontation were already rippling through the inmate hierarchy. Verified interventions had restored immediate order, but unconfirmed dynamics continued to shift quietly, a reminder that San Quentin's internal equilibrium was fragile and constantly tested. Every glance, every gesture, every whispered message could alter the balance of power once again. By nightfall, Lopez finalized her report, highlighting verified incidents and unconfirmed lead. She emphasized that the fight, the lockdown, and ongoing subtle behaviors demonstrated the complex interplay of influence, strategy, and survival within San Quentin. Even with all procedures followed and documented, the prison remained a living system, one in which every action, verified or unconfirmed, carried weight and consequence. Aftermath and shadows. The dust has settled, but in San Quentin, the story never truly ends. Subscribe and stay with us as the hidden dynamics continue to unfold. The morning fog hovered lightly over San Quentin, but inside, a quiet tension lingered that was heavier than any weather. The yard, now empty of confrontation, bore subtle signs of the prior week's incidents. Minor marks on cell doors, rearranged personal items, and the whispered calculations of inmates recalibrating alliances. According to verified CDCR reports, following a major fight or lockdown, prison staff often see ripple effects in behavior for weeks, as inmates adjust their routines and test the boundaries of influence. Investigator Dana Lopez reviewed the compiled data one last time. Verified incidents included the yard altercation, the subsequent lockdown, segregation of involved inmates, and confiscation of contraband. Administrative records confirmed that all standard procedures were followed, and no serious injuries were left untreated. Unconfirmed observations, such as subtle communications between factions, minor intimidation, and potential influence of new transfers, were noted, though their direct impact could not be conclusively verified. Historically, patterns like these have foreshadowed either further incidents or strategic consolidation of power among dominant inmates. Officer Rodriguez conducted a final patrol through Block C. Inmates moved with careful deliberation, each aware that small gestures carried meaning. Some attempted to strengthen alliances, while others focused on avoiding potential conflict. Verified records show that prison dynamics operate on both overt actions and silent observation, learning who holds sway, which alliances are strong, and where vulnerabilities exist. Unconfirmed leads suggested that certain inmates were still negotiating influence in subtle ways, possibly preparing for the next day's interactions, though no actionable evidence had yet emerged. By afternoon, administrative and investigative staff began assessing the long-term implications. The immediate incidents had been contained, but San Quentin's internal equilibrium had shifted. Verified outcomes included adjustments to inmate assignments, increased surveillance of high-risk individuals, and updates to incident reports for future reference. Lopez highlighted patterns consistent with prior research on gang influence in maximum security facilities. Power is rarely static, and subtle behavioral changes can have cascading effects. Meanwhile, inside the cell blocks, micro-strategies played out quietly. Inmates who had not been directly involved in the altercation observed carefully, noting who had gained influence, who had lost status, and which alliances had been tested. According to verified studies, such observational learning is a cornerstone of survival in prisons like San Quentin, where direct confrontation is risky but social positioning can determine day-to-day safety. Unconfirmed observations included whispered consultations, coded gestures, and subtle exchanges, all indicating that influence and hierarchy continued to evolve beyond documented incidents. As evening fell, Lopez prepared a comprehensive summary for senior CDCR staff. Verified actions, such as lockdowns, medical interventions, and segregation measures, were clearly documented. Unconfirmed but plausible behavioral trends were marked, including ongoing observation of the new transfer inmate and potential testing of alliances by other factions. The report emphasized that while immediate threats had been neutralized, San Quentin remained a dynamic system, controlled yet alive with unverified strategies, influence, and silent negotiations. Outside the walls, the San Francisco Bay glimmered in the fading light, serene and indifferent to the human drama contained within. Inside, the consequences of the past week's events were etched into the social structure of the prison. Verified interventions had restored order temporarily, but the subtle shifts in power, influence, and alliances suggested that the delicate equilibrium could be tested again at any moment. The ghosts of previous conflicts, Manson, Ramirez, and countless others, had long since faded, yet the mechanisms of control, loyalty, and survival remained, shaping every decision, every glance, and every silent exchange. By nightfall, San Quentin was quiet on the surface, but beneath, the network of influence and tension persisted. Guards, investigators, and inmates alike understood one reality: in a maximum security prison, stability is temporary, power is fluid, and vigilance is perpetual. The week's events, documented and unconfirmed alike, had rewritten alliances, tested strategies, and reminded everyone that within these walls, even small actions can ripple into consequences felt across the prison. And while the immediate crisis had ended, the prison stories, both verified and unverified, would continue, a living testament to the tension, strategy, and human complexity that defined San Quentin.